Well, here, the protest is Nolbu's the eldest son, and he's a bad guy. And, why should we honor him to become the heir to the household? Whereas the good guy is the younger son, Heungbu. 안녕하세요. This is Mark Peterson with the Frog Outside the Well Research Center. Today I'm doing a program in English in collaboration with 7707. This is a channel that has asked me to do some work with them, and I'm happy to do it because they have very wonderful programs. Today's program is about my favorite folk tale, which is the Heungbu Nolbu story. It also has two other stories, the Korean Cinderella and Korean Red Riding Hood. We're going to talk about this for a little while today. This is all done by AI, so it's really a clever visual. And here in this first scene, Heungbu is begging Nolbu for some rice and some food for his family. Now, I want to set the scene here a little bit. And when I analyzed this Heungbu story in 2008, I gave a presentation in Andong at the Korean Advancement of Korean Studies Center in Andong. And my paper, out of about 40 papers that were presented, was picked up in the Jungang Ilbo, in the Jungang Daily News. And it says, my thesis was, the Heungbu story is really protest literature. It's protesting the loss of inheritance for everyone other than the eldest son. Daughters were disinherited and younger sons were disinherited. Only the eldest son gets the property. This is called primogeniture. In Korea, younger sons got some property, but daughters were completely disinherited. And in this story, Heungbu is the younger brother. Nolbu is the older brother. And Nolbu has a big house with lots of land and lots of food and animals and everything. And Heungbu has nothing. Nolbu has a very demanding, we call him high-maintenance wife, whereas Heungbu has a very sweet, good-hearted wife who has given him lots of children. Nolbu has no children. Heungbu has lots of children. Now, this story, unlike the other two in this series, the other two are true folk tales. The Heungbu story is originally a Pansori story, meaning it was sung in a operatic, the Korean style opera, Pansori. And so it's not quite the same kind of folk tale. It has more of a tradition of singing, and they wrote the story down. In Korean, you have the Heungbu Ga, the song of Heungbu, and the Heungbu Jun, the story of Heungbu that's written. So the other two stories we'll look at today don't have a singing Pansori tradition to them. Well, here in this first scene, Heungbu is begging Nolbu for some food for his family. Now, when the story is told, it's told somewhat in a comedic fashion. It's a little bit funny, and there's a lot of exaggeration. The fact that Nolbu has no children and his wife is very demanding, and they have a very luxurious house, whereas Heungbu has a very poor house. In some versions, there are many versions of this story. He lives in a cave, and he has 8 children or 10 children, lots and lots of children, and no food. And so he works at the rice husking mill for dust, grain that's left over. And it has a lot of funny exaggerations. Well, here he goes to Heungbu and says, he goes to Nolbu and says, could I have some food for my family? They're starving. And Nolbu rejects him, says, no, I don't have any extra food. And Heungbu says, well, I saw in the gatehouse you had oats and barley. And Nolbu says, oh, that's for feeding my horses and my cattle. And then he goes in and he says, well, I saw you had corn. Well, we need to make cornmeal. And he goes in and sees you have wheat. And he says, oh, well, I need wheat for the pigs. And so Nolbu won't give him any food because he has to feed his animals and et cetera, et cetera. So Nolbu comes across as a really, really bad guy. In fact, there are stories, the story goes on about some of the bad things that Nolbu would do. He'd do some pretty bad things. He would go to the bathroom in the village well, for example. and other really bad sorts of things that Nolbu would do. So Nolbu is the classic bad guy. Heungbu is the classic good guy. And this first scene, we go on from here, from the begging scene, and here Heungbu is begging, and he sees here a swallow, and the swallow has fallen from the nest. Heungbu fixes the swallow's broken leg. He binds it up with a splint, and the swallow flies to the south, as all swallows do, and comes back in the spring with a seed. And he's bringing this lucky seed, and he plants the seed, and the story is very shortened here, but the seeds grow into huge pumpkins, and when he cuts the pumpkins open in the fall, when they've grown large to harvest, out comes, in this scene, gold, just all kinds of gold. In most stories, there are 5 gourds, 5 pumpkins, and each one has a different treasure. Clothing, servants come out of one. And in the last one, out pops a big house. So all this magical thing takes place because Heungbu is a good guy, and he fixes the swallow's leg. Well, and he gets all this money. Well, here's Nolbu, the bad guy, and he finds himself a swallow, and what? He breaks his leg, and then he fixes it and tells the swallow, fly off to the south and bring me a seed. And so here comes the swallow with a seed, and Nolbu plants the seed, and as you see, it's all infested with bad critters and such. And the one version has 5 seeds, 5 pumpkins, and each one has different things. And one has demons, others has plague, and all sorts of monsters and all sorts of things. And the last pumpkin, he opens it, and out comes a flood of sewer. That the flood is like a flash flood that washes away Nolbu's big, nice house. So what does Nolbu do? He has to go to Heungbu and beg for a place to stay. And what does Heungbu do? He's a nice boy, nice brother. He says, oh yeah, here, I'll take care of you. Come and stay with us. So happy ending. Well, the story is usually told in terms of good brother, bad brother. And this is the story of the good brother who, in spite of it all, takes care of his bad brother. My interpretation is this is protest literature because it was at this time in the late 17th, early 18th century that this story appears, which is exactly the same time that the inheritance law changed. In Korea, from the Koryo period up through the first 3 centuries of the Chosun period, the inheritances were divided equally between all sons and all daughters. But the daughters were disinherited, and the younger sons were largely disinherited. They got a little bit, but they didn't get the house. The main property went to the eldest son. Well, here the protest is Nolbu's the eldest son, and he's a bad guy. And why should we honor him to become the heir to the household, whereas the good guy is the younger son, Heungbu. So, in my point of view, this is protest literature, protesting this change of inheritance in the late 17th, early 18th century. Okay, as the story goes on, the next story is Korean Little Red Riding Hood. And here's a mother with her 2 children, and she goes off and encounters a tiger. And the tiger eats her, and she told her children, don't open the door while I'm gone. Well, the tiger dresses up in the mother's clothing. Little Red Riding Hood motif, huh? And comes back and says, open the door, and they won't open the door, and she says, open the door. Finally, they open the door, and they see the tiger, and they run. They run away, and it's an interesting thing that what they do is they pray to heaven to drop them a rope, and heaven drops them a rope that they can climb on. And as the story goes, they climb on up into heaven. The tiger also gets a rope, and he climbs up, but his rope is brittle and breaks, and he falls and dies. But the son and the daughter, they grow up. Now here we go away from the Little Red Riding Hood motif, and they become the sun and the moon. And that's how the sun and the moon came about, these brother and sister who were lifted up to heaven. The last folk tale is Cinderella, Korean Cinderella. And this is exactly like Cinderella's story. It's amazing. Now, there are places, there's a folklore motif study that looks at folklore all around the world. And there's certain motifs that are common. And the Cinderella motif is a very common image that of the second wife, the stepmother, and how the stepmother treats the father's daughter, the stepdaughter, in evil fashion. The good daughter, the father's daughter, is Kongji, and the evil, the stepsister, the daughter of the stepmother, is Patji. And as the story goes on, it's exactly Cinderella. It's exactly the Cinderella story. The wicked stepmother and the wicked stepsister force Kongji to do three difficult tasks that would be impossible for her to do before she can go to the party. The three difficult tasks are assisted by animals. For example, she has to husk some rice, a whole bunch of rice. Well, it would take her weeks to do it. But the animals come and help her do it quickly. And all the other tasks he's given, the little animals. So that's like the Cinderella story where the animals help out. And then she gets beautiful clothing and she goes to the ball and she loses her slipper. And the prince finds the slipper and wants to find who she is, and indeed finds her. And here in the closing scene, you see they're happily married and live happily ever after. Okay, those are the three folk stories, and the Cinderella story and the Little Red Riding Hood story are just common folk stories. But my input to the Heungbu Nolbu story is to say that it's protest literature against the unfair treatment to the younger son, the disinherited Heungbu, against the eldest son. So it's an interesting sort of motif because the eldest son's supposed to be the hero, and here in Heungbu, he's the bad guy. Well, that's my take on these in this collaboration with 7707. Watch their videos, and I'll see you back here again the next time. Thanks. Bye.